Today, I'll be looking at a client's decision to quit their job immediately at age 59 with $1.5 million and why it turned out to be their best financial move. Over my years advising clients on retirement timing, I've seen how making the leap at the right moment can drastically improve both financial outcomes and quality of life. And that's exactly why I'm making this video today, to share my client's story about retiring at age 59 with $1.5 million and why quitting as soon as possible was the right choice. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Ben. I've been a financial advisor for almost 20 years, and I want to help make your retirement even better. So this client did not come to me and say, do you think I could retire someday? Right? Their energy was totally different. They came to me saying, I need to retire now. I can't keep doing this. I feel like I'm meant to do something completely different, and this is my signal from the universe that it is time for me to retire. The client said, I think I am close financially, but I need you to show me how to make the numbers work. And there's an important distinction here. It wasn't just about being done with work for this client. They were genuinely excited about the next chapter. Now, the stress of their job had started to impact not just their mental health, but also their physical health, while at the same time, they discovered they were passionate about something completely different and something they were ready to run towards. This kind of clarity is extremely powerful when it comes to retirement planning. In fact, there is a famous line from Nietzsche, cited by Dr. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. And the quote is this: "He who has a strong enough why can bear almost any how." Now, of course, Dr. Frankl was not talking about retirement planning, but I think this phrase bears repeating. He who has a strong enough why can bear almost any how. And that's really what we're talking about here with early retirement. If your why is strong enough, you'll figure out the how. If you have an extremely compelling retirement plan, the financial how might be what's holding you back. So that's what we'll focus on today. I'll give you a slightly different way of thinking about this same concept, but a little bit of a different lens. I think retirement is a lot like having kids. And if you know me, I've got 6 kids. So that's one thing I know about is kids and retirement plans. But if you wait until it's absolutely, positively beyond any shadow of a doubt, certain that you're financially ready to have kids, well, you'll have kids promptly on your 71st birthday. Retirement essentially works the same way. You know, if you wait until the numbers say you've got a 0% chance of failure and a 100% chance of success, and, with absolutely no uncertainty that you'll ever run out of money, you'll probably retire about 15 minutes before you die. The truth is, retirement always requires a leap of faith. Now, granted, that is a leap of faith that is backed by research. It's backed by a written financial plan, right? But it is a leap of faith nonetheless. And I'd say that's even more true for early retirement, which I would define as anything before age 60. And for this client, the strength of their why, their compelling retirement, gave them permission then to take that leap of faith. Now, if you feel like you're in a similar situation to this client that I'm talking about in this video, click the link in the description once this video is over, book some time with me, and I'll analyze your situation, and I'll show you how to build a how around your why. Now, when this client looked at their situation, even though they had over $1 million saved, they could see plenty of reasons why working a few more years might be a good idea, right? In their mind, perfect would be waiting until 65 when Medicare kicks in. Perfect would be waiting until maybe 67 or 68 when their Social Security check would be larger, which would then in turn mean that they'd have to withdraw a lot less from their retirement accounts. Perfect would be waiting until every single number was perfectly optimized with zero uncertainty and zero chance of failure. But deep down, that client knew that perfect maybe didn't exist and would maybe never arrive, right? Retirement always involves some kind of a leap of faith. Now, here's what this client saw as hurdles that she needed to jump over if she wanted to retire early at 59. So the first one was no Social Security until 62. Now, after watching some of these videos and listening to my podcast, she's open to the idea of waiting longer, maybe until full retirement age, maybe later, just depending on investment returns and sequence of returns risk. The other big hurdle that she saw was healthcare gap until 65. She wants to retire at 59, not yet old enough for Medicare, so she needs some kind of a plan to cover insurance in those in-between years, and we price that at about $2,000 per month. And now the third thing that she's up against, at least in terms of early retirement, is lumpy cash flows. So she knew her retirement income wouldn't always be smooth, but she also realized that a lot of those bumps could be seen as opportunities, right? Once Social Security kicks in, once Medicare reduces her expenses, maybe once her house is paid off, she'd be able to then scale back the withdrawals she's taking from her portfolio. And of course, that meant more freedom then to front load the fun in her retirement, the fun spending, while she had her health on her side and while she had energy on her side. So yes, these obstacles are very real and the client saw them clearly, but their why was stronger. right? Stronger than the fear of what am I going to do about health insurance? Stronger than the fear of or the temptation to grind it out at work for a few more years. Stronger than the anxiety that might come with uneven cash flows earlier on in retirement. Because like I mentioned, if you wait until every single obstacle is gone, you're just very likely going to work forever. And that simply was not an option for this client. They were being pulled forward by their compelling future, and they're ready to work with an expert to figure out how to make this happen. So now that we've looked at why she wants to retire and we've acknowledged the obstacles, let's talk about how to actually navigate these obstacles and make this work and what pieces you can implement into your own retirement plan. So I always want to start out first with congratulations. Saving $1.5 million by 59. Of course, that puts anybody in that group in the top tier of all savers. I would say easily in the top 10% compared to their peers. So if that's you, congratulations. I know that was no small task. But that level of discipline has bought them the freedom to think outside the box and explore early retirement. Now, the biggest challenge isn't whether they've saved enough, right? It's how to manage the lumpiness of cash flows early on in retirement. And that's really where analyzing her cash flows and or just creating a simple spreadsheet can really help us see all the moving parts. So she's got a lot of things working in her favor. We'll list them off here. She's got $1.5 million saved. That's really going to be the foundation. She's got at least 2 built-in opportunities to reduce her withdrawals later on, which is going to allow her to spend more money sooner. Now, what those are is at 65, Medicare kicks in. Until then, as a single retiree, she's going to pay, like we said, about $2,000 a month for healthcare. But when she's on Medicare, that's going to drop that fixed expense from $2,000 to about $500 a month, $1,500 monthly savings, which would be a permanent reduction from the withdrawals in her portfolio. And then the other component that we're planning ahead for is 62, certainly, but anytime beyond, Social Security becomes an option for her. It's sort of waiting in the wings for her to call on. Now, this client wants to delay claiming as long as they comfortably can because they like those guaranteed increases. Again, that could go all the way until 70. We don't know, but it's flexible. Right? If the market is really strong, she can defer longer. But if the market struggles, she could turn it on earlier, right? It's giving her essentially unlimited flexibility. Either way, every month that she delays Social Security, she builds in a little bit more long-term security to her plan. So rather than defaulting to, I'm just going to keep working, we've afforded ourselves this flexibility because of our saving up a portfolio. Now we can use that to iron out a lot of these lumpy cash flows. And that's really the key shift, right? Instead of seeing your portfolio as a static pile of money, we use it as a bridge. Your portfolio is now a tool to iron out the lumpiness between now and when those permanent spending reductions kick in or income options. Okay, so what do those lumpy cash flow years actually look like and how do we navigate them? Well, if we're going to itemize them, from 59 until 65, her spending goal is $8,500 a month. And in fact, throughout her entire retirement, an inflation-adjusted $8,500 a month is her spending goal, about $100,000 a year. From a $1.5 million portfolio, that's roughly a 6.8% starting withdrawal rate. Now, by most standards, that is higher than the safe withdrawal rate. And really, that's the point. Early retirement often comes with a higher than average or a higher than sustainable initial withdrawal rate. But it's not a forever withdrawal rate, it's just the initial withdrawal rate. Because at 65, now Medicare is going to cut those healthcare costs by $1,500 a month or $18,000 a year. At that point, we would recommend that she reduce her portfolio withdrawal by that amount. So her withdrawals are going to fall from $8,500 a month to roughly $7,000 a month, $84,000 a year, which is about a 5.6% withdrawal rate, which now that gets us much closer to the guardrails friendly range that we're sort of used to seeing, kind of that 5.5%. Now, keep in mind, it's worth kind of pointing out again, even though we're reducing the amount coming from her portfolio each month, her lifestyle's not changing at all. Like her spendable money is exactly the same. We're simply accounting for smaller fixed expenses once Medicare kicks in, right? Medicare is saving her money monthly, so we just account for that by reducing her portfolio draw. That allows us to spend a lot more on the front end. Then the next one, once she hits, let's say 68, she can turn on Social Security. Now, really, she can turn it on at any time. We'll discover how to optimize it a little bit later on. But just so that we can account for it in our example here, at age 68, she's going to turn on Social Security. She's earned about $3,000 a month in deferred Social Security benefits, which then provides us with another opportunity to reduce her portfolio withdrawals. So now the portfolio only really needs to cover about $4,000 a month. Again, she's still spending $8,500, but only $4,000 a month is coming from her portfolio. The rest is accounted for by permanently reduced spending because of the Medicare savings, and then now turning on Social Security. So if we look at $4,000 a month, 48, $6,000 a year into our $1.5 million, we have a 3.2% withdrawal rate. So she begins higher than ideal, right, early on because of early retirement, but she ends below many of the traditional safe withdrawal rates, like a 3% or a 4% safe withdrawal rate. And really, that's early retirement in a nutshell, right? Starts high, but if we account for everything, we step down. Now, for clarity, we're explaining these things conceptually. Yes, in a real plan, we're going to account for taxes. We're going to account for inflation changes. We just want to be very broad so people can kind of understand some of these guardrail type concepts. They just don't get talked about that much on YouTube. So we're staying high conceptually. If you want to learn more about taxes or inflation, we got a bunch of other videos and a bunch of podcasts to learn more about that. We're keeping it simple today for a reason. Okay, now enter the guardrails. Now, this is the framework that makes everything that we're discussing with early retirement possible. So instead of pretending, like the 4% safe withdrawal rate, instead of pretending that spending is smooth or simply just continuing to work and waiting longer to retire, we accept the reality that's in front of us and we just put the guardrails to work. So what some of those numbers look like is we've got a starting portfolio, like I mentioned, of $1.5 million. If we're willing to reduce spending temporarily during particularly rough times in the market, we can use a baseline withdrawal rate of about 5.5%. And even higher than that, as long as the higher spending is temporary, and this is crucial, it has a very specific ending date to that higher spending. So from that $1.5 million, we set an upper guardrail, about 20% above, so that's $1.8 million. Now, if the portfolio rises above that, we just increase our spending by 10%. Lower guardrail is the opposite, 20% below $1.5 million, about 1.2. Again, we're keeping the numbers very simple. If the portfolio drops below 1.2 million, it stays there for 6 months. We're going to reduce our spending by 10% below the baseline. Below the baseline, not her $8,500 a month of desired income, below the baseline based on the guardrails. And we'll discuss that again in a moment here. So 2 really important clarifications. These adjustments apply only to what's coming out of her portfolio. So when the market gets bad and it's time to reduce temporarily, well, your pension doesn't go down, your Social Security doesn't go down, any other guaranteed income that you have that's not coming from the portfolio doesn't change. This is just withdrawals from your portfolio. That's clarification number 1. Clarification number 2 is the portfolio doesn't know if the balance fell because the markets were bad or because you are temporarily withdrawing more as part of your early retirement plan, right? It only knows the balance. So the guardrails help keep you responsive to that reality. At some point, there's going to be a time to reduce just based on the history of the market, and we plan for that in advance. So behind the scenes, I'm describing this to you sort of audibly. Behind the scenes, we are working on an Excel version of what I'm describing to you so that you can actually calculate these numbers for yourself. So go ahead and hit subscribe. Stay tuned for, this is a much anticipated free resource that we're kind of making for you behind the scenes. We have, of course, a spreadsheet that we use in our office, but it's sort of become complicated enough that it really only makes sense to us. We're pulling in values from different things and wouldn't be usable for kind of a YouTube audience. So we're starting over on that, and we'll have that for you probably in a few weeks. I should also mention these withdrawal rules aren't something I just sort of made up off the top of my head. This is based on research that you can double check for yourself. I'm referring to dynamic distribution research by 2 guys named Guyton and Klinger. I guess that's 2 separate people. Guyton is one person and Klinger is the other. So if you want to Google dynamic distribution research, Guyton and Klinger, you'll find it. And what you'll find is it tells us for a 60-40 portfolio, there are several different types of portfolios, but I'm focusing on 60-40. If you're willing to trim spending when you hit that lower guardrail, you can start out at a much higher distribution rate, like 5.5%. So on $1.5 million, that's about $6,875 a month. But our client actually wanted $8,500 a month, which is above that baseline. But because we've pre-committed to what we'd cut if and when that lower guardrail is breached, that allows us to spend significantly more on the front end of retirement with confidence and without feeling like we're gambling away her future, right? We've made a plan to reduce her income and or coordinate with a plan B that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But back to our guardrails, when the markets go down, we would temporarily reduce her spending from $8,500 a month to about $6,200 a month until her portfolio recovers, or we use that plan B trick that I'll talk about in a moment. So again, looking at these numbers, we start with 5.5% of $1.5 million, which is $6,875. If that portfolio drops from $1.5 million down to $1.2 million, we reduce spending by 10%. So we go from about $6,875 down to about $6,200 a month. Now, even though the client plans to spend $8,500 a month, if her portfolio drops, we would reduce to $6,200. or we implement plan B, which I'm going to explain to you just in a moment when I'm done explaining this concept. Now, keep in mind the market is up, somewhere between 70 to 75% of the time. And this client wanted to spend more money sooner and they wanted to retire as soon as possible. So she is a really good candidate for this type of plan, but it's not for everyone, right? Some people would rather have a plan where, granted, they spend quite a bit less, both early on and later on, but they also have almost no chance of needing to reduce that income. So different plans for different folks. Some people want to spend more and are okay making adjustments later. Some people want more of a linear line. That's okay. But the psychology that makes this plan work is to pre-commit to your income adjustments. Don't ask if you'll have to cut back and then decide what you're going to cut back on. Assume, yes, I will need to cut back at some point because markets do go down. I mean, that's totally normal. So decide now what you're going to trim, and then you won't have to make any emotional decisions later. Give yourself multiple chances to be right. So I'll give you some examples. Let's say you are using your higher than average withdrawal rate because you're paying down your mortgage. Well, if we drop below that guardrail and we need to reduce spending, we'll pause the extra mortgage payments. Maybe we plan ahead to reduce travel, right? As a Midwesterner, maybe you're going to spend, 5 months in Arizona. Well, if we trip that bottom guardrail and we need to temporarily reduce spending, we spend 3 months in Arizona instead of 5 or whatever it is, right? Maybe we're going to do a lot of traveling. We want to travel every quarter minus the holiday season 3 times a year. Well, that maybe becomes 2, right? We're going to find something that's discretionary in our budget that we will decide ahead of time to trim. Now, keep in mind, if you're willing to explore a strategy like this, you're going to be able to spend significantly more than a 3 or 4% withdrawal rate. So there are pros and there are cons. What I'm describing to you today with guardrails is very, very different than a 3 or 4% withdrawal rate. I did mention implementing her plan B a little while ago, and here it is. So a trick that makes guardrails even better is to pair this portfolio reduction that is likely to happen at some point, because eventually the markets do correct. We just don't know when it's going to be. So if we pre-plan that income reduction with an income increase, like with your Social Security, that could really allow you to have the best of both worlds. So if guardrails tell you to reduce your portfolio draw by $2,000 a month, well, could you consider turning on Social Security for $2,000 a month right at that moment? Now, your lifestyle doesn't change, but the pressure on your portfolio drops, right? You still get the benefit of deferring your Social Security up to that point. Maybe ideally you wanted to wait until 70, but the market had a correction at 68. Well, it wasn't perfect, your plan to wait till 70, but you got your uninterrupted cash flow, right? So you got to defer Social Security up to that point, and you got to spend more money in retirement sooner, right? You're sort of getting the best of both worlds. This is how you use each tool in your retirement plan at its highest ability. So your portfolio, well, that provides the flexible bridge over your expensive early years. Social Security, well, that helps you make the most out of guaranteed income that you can time strategically as part of your broader plan. Retirement income guardrails, right? Those are the rules that keep you from drifting off course or running out of money. They also allow you to spend a lot more money sooner without needing to worry about depleting your portfolio. And what's the payoff? Well, the payoff is you get through the riskiest early years of retirement, right? Where sequence of returns risk is the most dangerous. You get through with a plan that can bend without breaking. If markets cooperate and you got a little bit of luck, well, you might make it to the safer years of retirement without cutting your spending at all. And then later on in retirement, that's where Social Security and Medicare, they're going to shield us from various retirement risks. So using a plan like this will let you take advantage of good markets, and the market is good most of the time. I think we're positive 70 to 75% of the time. It's going to help you avoid a situation where we're looking back on the first 10 years of retirement with regret, and we're saying, I wish I could go back and do all the things that I thought I couldn't afford to do because I was following a 3% or a 4% safe withdrawal rule. And we can do this enhanced spending all while having a written plan that's going to protect us for when markets inevitably fall, right? Markets go down. That's just part of investing life. So now that I've shared this story of early retirement starting at 59 with $1.5 million, you can better understand how she made decisions that led to her pursuing her retirement dream a little sooner. And now how you can take her situation and hopefully apply some components of it to your plan. So if you want me to analyze your early retirement readiness and help determine if you're prepared to make a similar decision, go ahead and click the link in the description and book some time with me, and we'll figure it out together. So again, my name is Ben. I hope this video helped to make your retirement even better. If it did, go ahead and click that like button, and I will see you in the next video.